Okay, it is 7 p.m. I am going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I am Lauren Christensen, Vice President. I'm going to start with introductions over with our student representatives.
Josh Patterson, Plymouth sophomore and Student Voice in Action co-chair.
Saeed Pawar, Canton Junior and Student Voice in Action co-chair.
Judy Westra, board member. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful evening.
Hi, Patrick Heo. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Anupam Chugsadhu. Thanks for being here.
I'm Cheryl Picard, and welcome everybody.
Patty McCoy, thank you for coming out tonight. It's a beautiful day.
Dr. Merritt, will you introduce yourself and your team?
Good evening and welcome. I just see a familiar face in the back. Hello, Mr. Brooks. How you doing? I'd like to begin by introducing my assistant, Ms. Diane Robertson. I want to thank her for being here to take the minutes and keep us on track every board meeting. I'd like the remaining members of the staff to introduce themselves, beginning with Mr. Brandon.
Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Good evening, everyone. Nick Brandon, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing. Welcome.
Good evening, Kurt Tiskowitz, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Debbie Piaz. I'm the Chief Finance and Operations Officer. Welcome.
Good evening, Beth Rail, Chief Academic and Innovation Officer. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening, Shantae Langford, Chief Human Resource Officer. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Liz Vartanian Gibbs, Assistant Superintendent, Student and Family Engagement.
Okay, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. On to the adoption of the agenda and approval of the consent agenda. Action item 24-10-20. Can I please have a motion?
Madam Vice President, I move that we adopt the agenda, approve consent agenda, action item number 24-10-20.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, that was moved by Secretary Sadhu and seconded by Member Westra. Dr. Merritt, can you please take us through the agenda?
Yes, Vice President Christensen. This evening, our consent agenda consists of human resources transactions since our last time together. We have new hires and resignations for your consideration, as well as the approval of minutes from our regular meeting on October the 10th, 2023. Finally, we have the final reading of policy 5230, late arrival and early dismissal.
Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, please say no. Okay, motion passes. Is it 6-0? Yes. Yeah, okay, Ms. Langford, can you please take us through human resources?
Yes, thank you, Vice President Christensen. So this evening we have two new hires with us, and I'll just ask that you stand so that you can be acknowledged when I read your name here. I have Sarah Dunson, who's going to be the ASD coordinator, teacher consultant, and intake coordinator. Welcome at Dodson. And then I have Megan Sparling, who will be a resource room co-teacher at Discovery. Welcome, Megan. I have a little gift for you if you want to meet me out in the hallway, and that concludes the HR portion of the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to celebrating success with Treasurer Kehoe.
This evening, the Board of Education will once again celebrate our school community with an Extra Miler Award to one of our hardworking and outstanding Miller Elementary School educators, Mr. Brandon Lee. Mr. Lee, a truly outstanding fifth grade teacher at Miller, is passionate about everything he does to support students every day. He works hard to help all new staff and shows both leadership and mentorship for his colleagues. Mr. Lee also goes above and beyond the curriculum by hosting a STEM baseball fantasy league every year that in a fun and innovative way helps students work on multiplication and decimals. A gifted instructor, he also provides multiple strategies when teaching subjects and is always available to make connections with his students. Brandon also plays games with students during recess to build on their relationships outside of the classroom. Both inside and outside the classroom, he works collaboratively with other staff members to improve student learning, lead special events, and do the little things that make Miller an amazing place for all students. PCCS is so thankful to have Brandon Lee positively impact the lives of our students by being a great role model. At this time, I'd like to invite Tara Truhill, who recognized Brandon Lee for this award, to talk more about his contributions to PCCS schools.
Okay, hello, I'm Tara. I am a first-year teacher, and I teach 5th grade along with Brandon at Miller. As we all know, teaching is very hard. Being a mentor to a first-year teacher is even harder. I have like 1,000 questions a day, but Brandon makes time always to answer all of them. On the first week of PD, he came in my room, he gave me all of his notes from previous years. He said, let me know anything you need, like these are the notebooks for this, that, told me every single thing I needed to know. And he is kind of the person all of our staff go to if we have any questions. If he doesn't know the answer, he goes and finds someone who does, which I think is a great thing for a staff member as well. And teachers have thousands of things to do every day. On top of that, he finds ways to go above and beyond, find answers for other students or other staff members. He's always using sports in his class, which 5th graders love and they get so excited about. And we always have lunch where we talk during lunch about what we want to do, new ideas we have. And he is always eating lunch with students, which is a great thing and they get super excited about. So that is why I nominated him.
I understand we might have Miller Principal Cynthia Nickel here as well, and I wondered if she might want to say a few words.
Hi there, I'm Cindy Nickel. I'm the proud principal at Miller Elementary, and it's just so great to recognize Brandon for what he does each day, day in and day out. Just such great relationships with students, that making those connecting long-term relationships with staff. He's just a breath of fresh air and knowledge and information, and we're just incredibly lucky to have him as part of our staff. Thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to present Brandon Lee with the Mary Beth Carroll Extra Miler Award for consistently going the extra mile to support students of Plymouth Canton Community Schools. Brandon, would you like to say a few words?
That was really nice, Tara. Thank you. I'm really thankful and appreciative, and I don't even know, like, that just felt really good to hear all that good stuff that I do that I don't really think about that I do, but I do it on a daily basis without even realizing it. So, just thank you very much.
All right, while they're out taking some photos, we're going to move on to committee reports and action. First up is the president's report. I actually don't have anything there, so I'm going to skip over that if that's all right. And I will move on to Student Performance and Achievement Committee with Secretary Sadhu.
We haven't met since our last meeting here, where I gave the update. Our next meeting is November 1 at 5 p.m. in this room. Hope some of you can join us.
On to the Policy Committee with Member McCoyne.
So we actually met tonight at 5:30, and we got a lot done tonight. We were joined by, we now have liaisons from the Student Voice and Action Committee, and one of them was able to join us tonight. It was kind of late notice. So we will have somebody, a liaison on our committee every month now, well, 2 of them. So we got through quite a few things. We are working through all of our policies to make sure they've all been updated and looked at. So we got through several new business and some old ones. So our next meeting is going to be November 28th. The 28th. So this agenda says the 22nd, but that is not correct because our meetings in November are the 14th and the 28th. So make sure you change that to the 28th. It's at 5:30. It is the collaboration room, which is way down to the end of this hallway, and everybody is welcome, where we will be continuing our journey through the 5,000 or student policies.
Thank you. Okay, on to finance and operations with Treasurer Kehoe.
We met last Thursday, October 19th, and we reviewed a number of the items that will be on the presentation this evening, including the audit of the financial statements, where we went in depth on those processes. You'll get a more overview presentation today as part of the process. We also reviewed some of the preliminary draft documents and the approval for design and build, or design to bid, for East Middle School and West Middle School. So those are the additions that we're doing at East and West, and those additions and renovations are touching the whole school, but they're predominantly focused on some safety and security things for some big renovations in the office areas of both of those schools as part of the process. As with all of our bond projects, those things are done as part of the bond steering committee, as part of the administration, and working with our construction managers and other stakeholders throughout the districts, and they have conversations with building principals and students and families as part of the process that participate in the design sessions. We have staff members representing music, choir, science, life skills, physical education, administrators, administrative assistants, food service, security, and central maintenance are also part of this process. So it's really a big tent that gets the information together to support those kinds of initiatives and to make sure that we have good input and stakeholder participation in reviewing those designs. Those designs will now go out for bid, and then when they come back from bid, they'll come back to the F&O. We'll review them as part of that process before they're ultimately presented here at the board. So there's lots of opportunities for the community to provide feedback and input, both as part of the formal process that happens within the school buildings, as well as through those committees and that work that's there. In addition, we also reviewed the cargo van purchase that we'll have on the agenda this evening, as well as the sidewalk replacement that are also on the agenda this evening. And our next F&O meeting is Thursday, November 9th at 5 p.m. in this room.
Okay. Up next, we have Student Voice and Action Committee with both Josh and Saeed.
So first up, at our last meeting, we did an open house for any students who wanted to learn about Student Voice in Action and then possibly join. And then we discussed how would that look like and what we might be tackling in the future.
Our next meeting will be on Monday, November 20th at 6 p.m. in the Canton High School Media Center. Thank you.
Vice President Christensen, can I add one other piece?
Yes, please.
We finalized students that volunteer to be on each committee. So I want to, first of all of the chairs of the committees do know that these students are going to be coming to your future meetings.
We're excited.
We are so excited to have students from the Student Voice and Action Committee join all of the board committees. So it's amazing to have students represented at every level of the board work. So I want to thank the students, the co-chairs, for volunteering their time, as well as the students that will be part of the liaisons for each of the subcommittees.
Great. Okay, moving on to administrative reports and recommendations. Dr. Merritt?
Thank you, Vice President Christensen. Before beginning my superintendent's report this evening, I just want to begin by, on behalf of our entire P-CCS district, offer my sincerest condolences to the families, friends, staff, and most importantly, the countless students, past and current, who are mourning the loss of longtime Canton High School teacher and gymnastics coach, John Cunningham. He passed away unexpectedly on Saturday. Mr. Cunningham spent 5+ decades serving our students here in P-CCS, and whether it was as a literature teacher in the classroom or as a mentor to many of our gymnasts, his legacy of excellence will continue to live on in the many lives that he has touched. He'll be remembered for his electric smile and also for his belief that his role as a coach extended beyond the technical aspects of sports to include giving his students skills to prepare them for all challenges in life. We want to thank him for his dedication to the students of our district, and we want to continue to lift him up and honor his memory here in P-CCS.
And I want to thank Mr. Cunningham for being my teacher almost 40 years ago, and in my science fiction class, and really giving me the love of reading and science fiction at that time. He really is somebody that inspired me as part of that process, and I will miss him greatly.
So many stories, so many lives. This evening, I'd like to move on with my report around our students and talk about, when we think about the adults that really have an impact on the lives of students, and you see Mr. Cunningham and how he really has inspired students, we continue to be proud of the work that our students do here at school. And I'm so proud to share that PCEP student Vahiba Ramu, pronounce his name correctly, Vahiba Ramu, received national recognition this week after the College Board notified him that he received, listen to this, a perfect score on the 2023 AP Microeconomics exam. Now talk about that being a truly incredible feat. He was one of just 44 students to earn this achievement out of 95,000 AP Microeconomics exams taken globally. We congratulate him on this amazing achievement. We also want to recognize the outstanding work of our teachers, our AP teachers at PCEP, whose tireless efforts prepare our students for these demanding exams. What a shining example of our students and our staff truly reaching higher. Can we just give this young lady? I was so pleased last week where I had an email from a parent that was sharing with me just how outstanding our students from Pioneer did on their field trip. So just wanted to talk about our middle school students and how they just learn incredible things on their travel. We truly believe in P-CCS that a student's educational experience extends beyond the walls of the classroom. And recently, both West and Pioneers completed trip experiences that greatly enhance the education they receive in school each day. Our West students completed the school's annual trip to Washington, D.C. The trip saw them visit sites at our nation's capital while they learned about civics and government. And our Pioneer 6th graders just completed their traditional trip to the YMCA's camp in Fenton. And again, this is a camp that encourages students to step away from daily distractions and screen time and sees them participate in physical and traditional camp activities, team building and bonding exercises. They connect with nature, and again, for that parent to really lift them up and talk about their experience there. I was very proud of them and these opportunities that we're able to provide for our students beyond our classroom. This is really what makes P-CCS an incredible learning experience for our students, our staff, and all of our families. Invitation coming up, our PCEP Open House. This is such an important event. This is going to take place on Thursday, November the 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. This will be in the Salem High School cafeteria. We really encourage everyone to come out. This evening really just offers an opportunity to see the vast curricular and extracurricular opportunities available for students. They'll have program club representatives. I believe that we're going to have SBA there in attendance representing as well. They can answer any questions you may have. It's an opportunity to give tours and make what is so frightening as parents. I was a parent once sending my kids to the park, and you're so frightened, but it really helps big to feel small and really get connected early. And you really just want your students to be engaged in these incredible opportunities. So again, we just want to invite all members of our community to come out and spend some time on the campus at the open house on Thursday, November 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. That again is in the Salem High School cafeteria. Finally, I'd like to invite district families to share their opinions with us as we seek feedback as a part of the 2023 Fall Family School Relationship Survey. Now remember, we have a change in this survey rhythm this year. This is really about giving feedback to your individual schools. How are we working to meet your needs of your students and families at our individual schools? We take this feedback every single year. We'll give it now in the fall and again in the spring. We have previously just opened this in the spring, but again, this extra fall survey will give us a better understanding of the ways that we can support our students and our families and their needs. This deadline for responses has been extended to this Sunday. That'll be October the 29th at 11:59 p.m. And again, the survey can be filled out by visiting the district website. I believe our principals also sent a direct email to all families to make accessibility easier for you. So we want to encourage you to lend your voice to this survey. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Okay, let's move on to finance and operations with Ms. Piaz.
Thank you and good evening. Tonight is our annual board presentation for our fiscal year audit. As you know, we are audited by a third party, Plant Moran. And this evening, Jeff Higgins is here as partner of Plant Moran, and Lindsay Mink as the in-charge/manager of the audit this year. And I want to take this opportunity to thank them, as well as members of my staff, for all the work they did to get this to this point today. So, Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Debbie, and good evening, everybody. Again, as Debbie mentioned, we're with Plant Moran. We're the district's independent audit firm, and we're here tonight to talk about the audit results for the district's year ended June 30th, 2023. So there's 3 documents that come out of the audit process. There's the financial report with supplemental information, which represents the audited financial statements for the district. There's a separate federal award supplemental information report, which represents our separate audit of the federal programs administered by the district. And finally, there's the report to the board of the academy, which provides some insight and input in terms of how the audit process itself went. So with that, we'll take a quick flip through these first few slides. This is some information from that report to the board. Just provides, again, insight in the audit process. So this is where it's trying to give some perspective of, was it a clean audit? Was there lots of issues with lots of challenges, lots of problems? And really what all of this is saying is that it was a very clean audit process. There was no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There was no disagreements with management. We had no findings. All in all, a very clean process for the audit. And as a result of that, we end up on this slide. So again, it's our job as the auditors for the district to provide an opinion on the district's financial statements. And I'm pleased to report here tonight that we've rendered what's called an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. That would be the highest level of assurance that we can present on a set of financial statements. So again, from an audit perspective, a clean audit, no findings, no issues, a clean overall audit report. With that, then, we'll get into some of the numbers from the audit. And before we get into some of the fund level statements, we just wanted to start out here and just give a quick summary. This lays out, over the last several years, the various iterations of COVID relief funding that have been available to the district. So, of course, when the pandemic began in 2020, there were several different layers of federal funding that were put into place to help districts deal with the impacts of the pandemic. And this shows, as you can see, several various programs. I think the key thing to note here is that in total, that top right corner, you'll see the district was awarded roughly $38 million in various federal programs to deal with the effects of the pandemic. And to date, the district has expended about $30 million, so there's roughly $8 million left, and that will be expended here in this current fiscal year. And really, that's it then. I mean, all the federal programs have now sort of run their course. The dollars have been expended. And it's just important to keep in mind, again, over the last 3-4 years, we've had $38 million, and those dollars have now run out. So that creates a real cash management challenge for districts, because sometimes you hear that referred to as that fiscal cliff. We've had these dollars available. Those dollars have now come to an end. So it's just been incumbent on Plymouth, Canton, and really all districts to manage and deal with how they're going to work their way through when those funding dollars run out. So again, just wanted to point that out, because it has been a critical piece of the budget, obviously, for the last several years, and just wanted to point out how much that's received to date, and that, again, those dollars are now coming to an end. But with that, we will touch upon some of the financial statement numbers for the year ended June 30th, and now we'll turn it over to Lindsay.
All right, so now we're going to focus on the governmental funds balance sheet. So the district uses these different funds in order to demonstrate the accountability on how it spends certain resources. So starting off in the left-hand column, we have the general fund, which is the district's main operating fund. So during the year, there were total assets of $65 million in the general fund, total liabilities of $23 million, with an ending fund balance of $42 million. So kind of taking a look at those general fund assets, $24 million related to cash, and then about $30 million related to that state aid receivable for those July and August payments. So then moving on to special revenue. So the special revenue funds are used to account for the proceeds of specific revenue sources that are restricted or committed for certain expenditures related to the district. And then your debt service funds are used to facilitate the principal and interest payments on all long-term debt. And then your capital projects are used to record those bond proceeds. Here we're looking at the combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Focusing on the general fund, we saw an increase in fund balance during the year of $1 million, with again that ending fund balance of $42 million. So now we're going to kind of take a deeper dive into that general fund revenue broken out by source. So total general fund revenue during the year was $208 million. And as you can see, from a funding perspective, the district is completely dependent on those state and local dollars, which a vast majority relating to the foundation allowance as well as that MIPSR's cost support. So on this slide, we're taking a look at the historical per pupil foundation allowance. So the top line in the graph represents the line of inflation, which is based on the average inflation over a 10-year period. For this graph, we're using 2.7%. So what this graph is really depicting is that the per pupil foundation allowance has not kept up with the rate of inflation, as we can see with the gap in between both of the lines. So for example, if the per pupil foundation allowance would have kept up with the rate of inflation, we would have seen a per pupil foundation allowance of $11,000 during the year, which would have come out to as much as $30 million in 2023. Student enrollment is a main driver of revenue for the district, and this slide takes a look at your blended FTE counts over the past 7 school years, and then shows the current 2024 student enrollment counts. So the orange line in this graph represents the statewide enrollment. So while the district has seen a very slight dip going from 2023 and 2024, what this graph is really depicting is that we've seen even more significant dips in that state average, and in fact the district has actually exceeded the loss in enrollment we've seen statewide. All right, now we're looking at total revenue from the enhancement millage. So what this graph is depicting is that in the previous years, the district has typically received around $7 million related to the enhancement millage. However, in 2023, the district received less funding from the enhancement millage due to charter schools now being included in those regulations. All right, now I'll pass it up to Jeff to wrap us up.
Next couple slides, we're just going to take a quick look at the expenditures now for the district. So obviously Lindsay was focusing on the revenue. The other side of the ledger is the expenditures. This breaks out the general fund expenditures by function. So as you can see that roughly 74% of the district's expenditures are related to instruction and instructional support activities. Then you'd have managed operations and maintenance about 9.2%, transportation about 3.8%, and you can see from there. What this basically says is that 80% of the costs the district incurs are related to either teaching kids, maintaining the buildings that the kids are taught in, or getting the kids back and forth to school. So again, most of those costs are going into the educational process for direct, student education. Next, we take a look at general fund expenditures by object. So as you can see, again, 84% of the expenditures related to salary and benefit expenses. As you would expect, obviously, the district being a service-driven organization, the majority of the district's operating expenses are going to be on personnel-related type expenses. The next largest component there you'll see is purchase services, about 10.5%, and most of that would be related to transportation and custodial services. This next graph, we take a look at fund balance. Fund balance is effectively the difference between the district's assets and liabilities. So fund balance, it basically represents the accumulated results of all past year's activity in the general fund. Basically, it's the financial reserves for the district. And it's an important metric that we look at because it really helps the district deal with financial surprises and financial uncertainty. So for example, if there's revenue shortfalls or unexpected expenditures, enrollment fluctuations, those types of things that you may not necessarily have control over, this just helps the district manage those types of financial uncertainties. So that's the importance of fund balance. Then the question often is, well, what's an adequate level of fund balance? What's an appropriate level of fund balance? So fund balance is often expressed as a percentage of expenditures. So if we take a look at our total fund balance, which is roughly 42 million, and we divide that by our expenditures of roughly 207 million, that gives us about 20.2%. And that would be the total fund balance, which would be the teal colored bar there, I suppose. The orange bar would represent our fund balance percentage based on just the undesignated fund balance level, which would be about 18.7%. So just as a couple points of reference, so the state average as of June 30th, 2022 would be about 19%. So on a total fund balance perspective this year, you're above last year's rate by a little bit, although just anecdotally, I would expect that percentage to go up on the statewide level. And we've seen a lot of districts have some increases over the last few years, particularly because of all the COVID funding that's been available. Districts have been able to really help build up some of their financial reserves. So you're probably going to end up right around that state level, state average level. A couple indicators also we have on here. So the Michigan school business officials, which would be that blue line, would represent or would typically recommend a 15% fund balance target. So you'd be a little bit above that target. And then that red line would be the state early warning measurement. So the state has early warning legislation where if there's indicators that a district is experiencing financial hardships, there's additional monitoring and other activities you have to do with the state. So the state uses that 5% as kind of the threshold where they start to believe that there's signs of financial issues that they want to have more involvement around making sure that the district doesn't fall into deficit. This last graph, again, this gets into, we started at the beginning talking about some of the COVID funding, which is sort of a granular piece of the budget. We're ending here on another bit of a granular piece of the budget. This would be the retirement expense for the district for the last 5 years, the MIPSERS expense. And the orange portion at the top represents the portion that's funded through the state through the UAAL stabilization funding. And then the blue portion will represent the remaining kind of contribution required by the district. So you can see for 2023, it's a total contribution into the MIPSER system of $51 million. And again, these are state mandated contribution amounts, but obviously, as you can see, it's a significant portion of the dollar. Basically, it's a total contribution of about 45% of payroll. So effectively, every dollar you pay in payroll, 45 cents is going into the MIPSER system. And as you can see, the state's really contributing about 17% of that. So they have these mechanisms through ways where they give the district money, like this 19 million that we see, and then the district has to immediately turn around and remit it to the state. So it doesn't really add to the district's financial resources, but it comes in as revenue, then goes out into the MIPSER system. And the state's really doing that because, at September 30th, 2022, the MIPSER system was about almost $38 billion underfunded. And then you tack on top of that the retiree healthcare portion of the MIPSER system was about $2 billion underfunded. So the state's really making efforts to put more dollars into that system. But of course, the flip side of that is it means that there's just less overall dollars. I mean, there is a finite pool of money at the state. And so the more dollars that they need to put into the MIPSER's retirement system, obviously there's less dollars to go around for other objectives. So again, we just pointed out because it is a significant component of the district's budget, which is really entirely out of the district's control. And that concludes our formal presentation this evening. Before we wrap up our formal presentation, though, we do want to thank Jody Malbon. We certainly appreciate all of her help in getting the audit complete this year. She does a lot of the heavy lifting for the district, and we truly appreciate that. And finally, of course, we want to thank Debbie Piaz. This is her last audit before she sails off into retirement. I'm sure she's going to miss it. And but we will truly miss Debbie. I mean, she's been fantastic for us to work with, and really, she's been a leader in the larger statewide K-12 community, and her contributions will be truly missed. But again, congratulations, Debbie, and thank you for all of your help over the last several years.
Thank you for that clear, concise, and comprehensive presentation. I'm going to kick it over to my left. Usually I start on this end, but I'll start over here for any questions. So, Member McCoy?
I really don't have any questions. This was lovely. We also, all of the supplemental material we got, fantastic. I would like to point out that our board policy for fund balance is 10%. So, just in case people are wondering about that, we do have a board policy that says we are not going to go below 10%. And that 5% is really not a place you want to be. That is a very onerous place to get to. And Ms. Piaz has really managed our money well over the years. I really liked not because it was great, but where it shows how much money we're not getting due to our state aid not keeping up with inflation. And point out also that we have bond funds because this doesn't really include infrastructure. And then just as a side note, at a future meeting, Member Sadhu and I went to the Wayne County Association of School Boards, and they talked about an infrastructure study. So if we could get some time in the future to present that, it was pretty interesting. But this was a lot of work. Thank you.
I just have a question on, is there a breakdown, like how much goes, and I don't know, maybe that's in here because I haven't looked at it, like on how much, you know, the amount of cost of teachers and the different programs that we have, is that broken down at all anywhere?
The audit report would break it down basically by general instruction and added needs. That's really from an audit perspective as far down as we present, but that information certainly is available at the district level, and obviously it can get really, really granular. But yes, so that information is available, but it's not necessarily something that's separately presented within the audit reports itself.
All right, thank you. Secretary Sadhu?
Thank you for a very thorough and clear report, and thank you, Ms. Piaz, for always doing great work behind the scenes, because this can't be done without you. And I had my question, and I think Treasurer Kehoe is going to answer that with regard to why are we doing this as a first and final read.
Sure. So we're doing this as a first and final read because this has to be submitted by the end of November 1st. And we have traditionally always done these audit reports as a first and final read. So there has never been any questions. We have an opportunity to vet and review these things in the F&O committee, and all board members get a copy of all these materials before they come through. Certainly if there were questions that required us to table this, we could and have a special meeting, but it's never been an issue for us. I did have a couple of things I wanted you to highlight for our audience and those that are watching at home. If you or Ms. Piaz could describe the notion of the UAL and the MIPSERS funds that we have. As I understand them, they're not paying for our current teachers, but rather for previously retired teachers as part of that process.
So that would be correct. So it's essentially it's the current retirees, and it's an actuarial calculation of obviously life expectancies and increases, those types of things. But yeah, so it's really just funding the current retirees. Obviously, there's a whole bunch more teachers going to be coming into the pool, and that obviously affects those calculations. But yes, it's for the current retirees, between the retirement and healthcare piece, it's well over $40 billion underfunded. So it is a challenge.
The unfunding is because at some point in the past they weren't putting the money in that they should have been putting in, and now they're trying to catch up. Correct?
Correct. Yes, and that's really been growing over the last several years. And it's interesting. So we talked about the district contribution levels. So if you go way back to 1994, when Proposal A, which really governs how schools are now funded in Michigan, that's when schools first started having to contribute into the MIPSERS system. At that point in time, the contribution rate was 11%. Today, the district's paying 28%, and the total contribution, when you add on these state support systems, is 45%. So it just shows how the system has not been really supported for all these years. And again, now the state has a plan in place to try to get that under control, but it's obviously it's a big amount of funding that they need to do to deal with that.
Yeah. And if we didn't have that, then that would be extra money that potentially would be available for our classrooms, for our schools, for our programs. So hopefully over time that number will come down and we'll be able to recoup that, but there's still a long ways to go.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing I wanted to make sure we clarify for the community is the difference between our fund balance and the unassigned fund balance. So if one of you could please describe that.
Yeah, so fund balance, again, it's that, basically, it's the financial reserves, and there's essentially different categories of how that's classified, and so, there's a couple of ways that that gets broken out. So when we say unreserved or the unassigned piece, the assigned portion, the largest part of that is that for 2023, 2024, the initial budget was actually a deficit of about $2.7 million. And so because we've effectively already committed to use part of that fund balance to fund a shortfall this year. And so that remaining amount is still basically unassigned, available for future, board and district initiatives.
Perfect. And I also wanted to point out for everybody is that last year, this year that this audit is covering, we originally had started out with a $3.6 million planned use of fund balance, so that would have been the assigned portion of it. Through the ESSER funds, through some cost-saving initiatives, through other factors that happened, we actually ended up with a $1.1 million surplus in that budget. So it's a total swing of a little over $4.7 million. And that's why our number is higher than maybe we might have ideally wanted to be, but that will also help provide a cushion for us as those ESSER funds run out, that we'll be able to manage some of those programs and activities that we're doing to continue to support them. So the great work that the district has been doing in making those additional investments in our student and family engagement programs, in our teachers on special assignment, and all those other programs, we'll be able to look at those programs and see which ones have worked really well for us and how we want to continue those, and which ones maybe have not been as effective, and how we can manage those as that ESSER funds drop off.
If I could, the one thing that Mr. Higgins mentioned was the financial stability of the district for fund equity, but it's also because there was a built-in timing problem. So the state aid doesn't come for this year until October 20th, but we already had 4 paydays prior to the state aid coming. So you have all your teachers and all your staff coming back to work in September and October, and we don't get our payday, for lack of a better word, until October 20th is our first state aid payment for this fiscal year. So that's why you need fund equity, is because the state of Michigan, in its ultimate wisdom at some point, moved its fiscal year from a 6/30 to a 9/30, and so when it did that, that was helpful for them, not so helpful for us.
And the last thing I wanted to point out is on the slide that shows our per pupil funding allowance. We certainly haven't kept up with inflation. We also look at groups like the School Finance Research Collaborative that did an evaluation of what is adequate funding, not great funding, but adequate funding, not including transportation. That number in 2021 was $10,421. So as a state, we're not where we need to be, and this district has always done more with less as part of that process.
Okay, so this is my first time through an audit, so please bear with me because I'm going to ask some silly questions. What's that?
No such thing.
Can you define for me what a clean audit means?
So it means it's unmodified. It means that the financial statements are, in our opinion, based on all of our audit procedures in accordance with GAAP. They appropriately represent the financial results of the district, and they would meet all the requirements that are required both from kind of a state level and then the federal level in terms of the accounting requirements that schools have to follow.
And just as a note, we try to spell out the acronym, so it's a really common GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So.
I remember that from high school accounting.
No, I know, but sorry, we try to make sure that everybody in the audience knows what those terms are, and we have a tendency to be a lot of acronyms.
And then can you go to slide 13, please, the general fund expenditures by function? Is there any way to find out how we compare to other districts? Like, are we spending more on activities and athletics than another district, or less, or whatever? I mean, you noted that we're kind of doing better than the average district as far as enrollment. Do you have similar for these expenditures?
Yeah, so there certainly statewide that information is available. Now, the most recent information would still be as of June 30th, 2022, because obviously all districts haven't yet reported. So I don't have that information off the top of my head, but there is certainly lots of data out there that the state puts out that breaks down by district, by different categories and functions, and so there are those opportunities available to really do some comparisons at that level.
Is there a way to find that?
Yeah, and Judy,
Yeah, on the state website, it's bulletin 1011 or 1014, and both those take the statewide. When everybody gives their financial statements in October, everybody then has to do a financial information database FID reporting by November 1st. They take all those results. It becomes true or accurate as of the following January, February, and then they put that in the hopper with a giant comparison. And so those are available, but they're all a year hence because we're now doing 23 numbers. Yeah.
Right, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
And Judy, we actually asked that same question in F&O, so we're going to pull that to get data together for the full board.
All right. And then my final question is, there's been a perception in the community that this district can't account for $1.9 million spent for athletics and activities, which would be about 80% of the activities in athletics. Did you find any evidence at all that we can't account for that large of a sum?
Certainly we did not, hence our
Otherwise we wouldn't have gotten
the clean audit opinion. So yes, I mean, certainly the athletic program is part of the overall audit process, and we are really going through and looking at, you know, the accounting and the controls around various areas, and yes, certainly there was no indications based on our tests and processes that there would be anything like that would be an issue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna move it over to Saeed and Josh.
I have no questions, but thank you for your clear report.
Same here, no questions, but thank you and everyone else who has worked on this for your clean report.
Okay, Member Picard has another question.
I just have a question since it has been asked as, for page 10 of the report, what is the student performance incentive and best practice, and why was that, I don't know this, back in 2013-14?
That's an excellent question. It goes past my memory banks, unfortunately, unless Debbie, you recall.
So, in those years, the State Aid Act included categorical state aid for those two items, and they did not continue that funding.
Oh, for anybody?
For anybody.
For anybody.
Okay.
Not just
Done.
us.
Okay.
Whole state.
All right, thank you.
And one of the best practices was that you had to bid out some of your services to open the door to privatization. Or they took some of your state aid.
Okay, any other further discussion or questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us on to action item number 24-10-21, consider approval of a resolution, annual financial audit reports for fiscal year 2022-2023, first and final reading. Can I please have a motion?
Ms. Vice President, I move that we consider approval of a resolution for the annual financial audit reports for fiscal year 2022-2023, action item 24-10-21, first and final reading.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Treasurer Kehoe and seconded by Secretary Sadoo. I mean, we just had our presentation, but any other questions or comments around this resolution? No? Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to, we have a consider approval of a resolution for purchase of a cargo van for the maintenance department. This is a first reading.
Yes. If you have any questions, Mr. Welsh is here, but a GMC Savannah cargo van will be purchased from Todd Wetzel of Buick for $34,237 based on statewide pricing. We received a reimbursement from our insurance company in the amount of $14,000 for a used truck that was stolen off our property. And the remaining $20,237 will be paid from the operations department vehicle account. This item was presented at the F&O meeting on October the 19th, 2023.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to any questions. I'll start again with my left. Member McCoy?
I assume this was thoroughly talked about in F&O, and I read all the information.
The truck was, I think, 2003.
It was 2003, correct?
Yes, the 2003.
20 years
So,
old.
so it's
Correct.
yeah, it was stolen, recovered, so we didn't lose any of the equipment inside. But the truck was damaged to the point that it was non-repairable.
I have no questions.
My questions have been answered, thanks.
All right, no questions,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a Hoban Sidewalk Replacement Award recommendation. In order to promote safety in the Canton neighborhoods, the Canton Township Engineering Services Division goes around and checks sidewalks throughout the township. The district is responsible for the condition of any sidewalks that fall within the public right-of-way. Under the Sidewalk Ordinance and Public Acts of 1989, the Charter Township of Canton has has done their inspection near Hoban Elementary School and requires us to repair some of the approaches along Saltz Road. This 2023-24 sidewalk program is for 2 years, but the work will be done coming up in 24, I believe, for a total of $52,442.26. Canton Township has already done all their bidding procedures, and this is the result of their bid award. It would be to install a 4-inch sidewalk for $19,169 and an 8-inch sidewalk for $29,272 with some contingency of $4,000 for that total of $442.26. The thicker sidewalk is due to the traffic that would be in vehicular traffic, both in and out, both buses and vehicles, and the others is just for walking traffic. Mr. Grzinski is here if you have any other questions.
Start with Ms. McQueen.
I don't have any questions. I'm assuming this is the same as any municipality where they're gonna do it
Correct.
anyway.
Yeah, we
This
usually
is not
do.
something we can say no.
Correct.
We did discuss this in F&O that we don't have to use the
Right.
Canton Township contractor, but we evaluated the price for this program again, or the district evaluated the price for this program against what the price for Canton Township, and this was competitive. So,
Because they're doing a lot.
yes, they're doing-
And so usually it's the same as the city does it in front of your house.
Correct.
It's cheaper when they're pulling them all out.
We usually have minor repairs at many of the buildings that are well under the bid limit. In this particular case, we had some ADA issues that we had to address. So we had excessive slope on some of the sidewalks.
I have no questions.
I have a question in terms of timing. Will this happen during the summer
It's
months?
gonna happen right away.
Or right away, okay.
What did you say the timeline was, completion?
It's only gonna, well, the cure time is a couple weeks,
Okay.
so.
And we discussed it extensively in F&O. The other thing you'd note here is that this is coming out of the 2019 bond funds. So as with any of our bond projects where we have excess funds, where projects come in cheaper than what we had anticipated, then those funds are available, and we still have a timing limit of when we can spend those. So we had done the Discovery chiller replacements. This is a small amount that was able to be used as part of that 2019 bond. So just, again, for context for those in the community, bonds are very specific as to what we can spend on. We can't just spend it for anything, but this was one of the allowable purposes in that process.
You answered my question.
Saeed?
No questions, thank you.
Just one question. Is the current sidewalk a hazard to anyone using it?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to action item number 24-10-22, consider approval of a resolution for summer property tax levy. This is a final reading. Can I please have a motion?
Ms. Vice President, I move that we consider approval of a resolution for the summer property tax levy. It's action item 24-10-22, and it's a final reading.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, it was moved by Treasurer Kehoe and seconded by Member Westra. I'm going to call for a vote. All those, or do we have any
Just- yeah.
discussion? Okay. Questions?
No.
Discussion?
Do we need to read it?
I don't think so. I mean, we discussed it extensively at the last board meeting, so.
All right, I will call for the vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, please say no. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to action item number 24-10-23, consider approval of a resolution certifying operating millage renewal proposal. This is also a final reading.
Madam Vice President, I move that we consider approval of a resolution certifying the operating millage renewal proposal, action item 24-10-23, final reading.
Can I?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this was moved by Treasurer Kehoe and seconded by Secretary Sadoo. Any discussion on this item?
I just wanted, it sounded good, the 20 years, but I'm kind of hesitant on doing it for 20 years. A lot can happen in 20 years, so I'm kind of reserved more for 10 years. So I'm just explaining that, so, for the
Do you want to articulate what your concerns are?
just that a lot of things happen in 10 years, and I don't know, maybe it's good to review things in 10 years instead of 20.
Well, we always have an opportunity if there's some change in the process, we could do an early renewal or a change in that if we, for example, were to hit up against the Headley rollback process. So there is an opportunity to re-review this as part of that work. So this just avoids some of the complications that go out as part of this process, and it is on non-homestead properties.
Right. So how would that be brought up if there was a concern like in 10 years?
So,
like it would just,
go ahead.
yeah.
So this is, regardless of what's authorized, you are only allowed to levy 18 mills. That's the state maximum. So regardless of what happens, the Headley rollback is on the larger amount, not on 18 mills. If you lose the ability to tax at 18 mills, it's lost forever. The state assumes you're levying 18 mills on non-homestead property when it considers the foundation allowance formula. And so then it's a permanent loss. And that's about $33.3 million to our district.
Every year.
Yeah, annually.
So then in 10 years, you could still review it and say.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you, that helped.
All right, any other questions or discussion? No? Okay, so this is a final reading, correct? Yep.
Yes.
So I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please say yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Those opposed, say no. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, on to action item number 24-10-24, consider approval of a resolution to purchase Chromebooks. This is also a final reading.
Madam Vice President, I move that we consider approval of a resolution to purchase Chromebooks, action item 24-10-24, final reading.
Second.
It was moved by Treasurer Kehoe, seconded by Secretary Sadoo. Any discussion? All right.
Discussed extensively in the last meeting and in F&O.
Fair. Okay. Let's call for the vote. Those in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, say no. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, now we're on to teaching and learning with Ms. Rail.
This is a final reading.
Oh, yes, okay. So we have, thank you for that. So now we have action item number 24-10-25, consider approval of a resolution for 21st century global issues curriculum materials. This is a final reading. Can I please have a
Madam
motion?
Vice President, I move that we approve action item number 24-10-25. It's a resolution for 21st century global studies issues curriculum materials final reading.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Secretary Sadoo and seconded by Member Westra. Any discussion around this topic?
And we discussed it last time and it was vetted in SPOM.
Great. Would like to call for a vote. Those in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, please say no. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, that takes us on to citizens' comments. All right, looks like we have one here. Just a reminder, we have 3 minutes, and I'm going to call up Rocky Johnson.
Evening, everybody. How are you? I'd like to thank, well, President Wilson's not here tonight, but I'd like to thank him. And also like to thank Josh for coming out to the Canton, not Canton, but it was Salem versus Plymouth football game happened 2 weeks ago. Josh, thank you for being the person that you are. Thank you for the leader that you're becoming. Some interesting things I found out about him is that he plays 5 musical instruments, speaks 2 different languages, thinking about learning French. Amazing. This is the kind of kid that we need to have representing our schools. You should be very proud of who you are. I'd like to comment some things about the last board meeting, which happened 2 weeks ago. On 1010's meeting, we were talking about the bond and how it played out. It was a great presentation. It was really nice. Parts of that meeting, I was really kind of upset and kind of thinking some different things in my head, and then as the week goes on, thinking about how it rolls out. There's a couple things that when parents get things, you know, we complain a lot. We really do. We could have gold-plated robes and we would still complain. You could have pristine buildings, we would complain. It just is what we do. Some things about that, though, is that when we talk about things like, there's not a parent that I know that would forego the children's safety instead of having a new athletic field. The children's safety wins at all times. It would. Speaking for myself, I would trade every dollar in athletic budget if you could raise the score of reading between K through 6 and the math scores between 6 through 12. Every dollar of it can go straight for those programs. That's fine. That's how I am, and I want education first. But the point of it is that the facilities, we were told that we should go to the school level and talk to the administrators at the school level about facilities. I find that to be a problem. The reasons why I find that to be a problem is this, is that the schools have already seen those problems. They report the problems up and either it gets denied, gets delayed, or it gets forgotten about. If they walk the schools, which we were told that they walk the schools often, they obviously see those problems. Why aren't they being fixed? Those kind of things need to just go back, and the real reason why is that I see that the board works and guides the superintendent. The superintendent has an incredible job. You manage everything school, which is crazy. That's an amount of stuff that no one can really do. But see, we elect the board, the community elects the board, and we should come to you with our problems. And I would rather the board take ownership of the problem versus kicking it down to the school level where they've already got enough problems to deal with. So I feel that the board should take us and have us put it right there and come back to you. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our citizens' comments. On to follow-up board questions. No? No, not follow-up? Okay. We are going to,
And does it have to be related to the board, or sort of a board question?
I suppose so, yeah, please.
I was just, like, when you had the semifinalists.
Ms. McCarkey, please speak into your mic.
I'm sorry, I do that all the time, don't I? So when we had the semifinalists for the national merit, is there any way of putting in, like, you know, we always kind of subgroup everybody. Is there any way of subgrouping those kids that, like what subgroups had achieved all this or whatever? I know we look at the kids that are struggling in a subgroup. Is there any way of showing what kids have done?
Not in terms of demographic information, is that what you're,
yeah.
so we wouldn't do.
So how can we do that though for
So
other
when you
areas?
look at how the state reports our data, they're reporting our data based on demographic groups. What is being asked with the 37 students, that would be identifying students by name and their demographic groups, which would be a violation of their rights. And so that is, when you get that information from a state level, you're not getting students' names, which is, here, these would be the actual 37 finalists, and we publish their names, and so we would not publish.
Is there any way of, like, looking at how they have achieved and maybe applying that to some of help our students? You know, how they achieve well, what are they doing, what are they studying, how are they?
So in general, our process is kind of a plan, study, do, act. So in any program
we evaluate. So if we're, we're looking at our AP programs, we're evaluating progress of all students, what's working well, what's not working well in terms of strategies, professional development that we may provide for teachers. Again, as you heard earlier, if there's something that's not working well, you abandon that and look for research-based. And so that is constant monitoring of our student achievement and our progress for students across the board in general.
Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. Do we have any other follow-up board questions that have come up during this meeting or last meeting that we need to discuss? Okay. All right. So at this time, we are going to move into closed session. We're going to be convening for a closed session for the purposes of negotiations. So I am actually going to ask the remainder of the audience to move so that we can proceed with our meeting as such. Thank you all.